Never in the field of human conflict has so much been owed by so many to so few. The immortal words of Winston Churchill describing the few who saved this country in the Battle of Britain, securing air superiority and staving off Nazi invasion. My name's Tom Harwood and this is GBN Originals. Why then are we talking about the Battle of Britain today? Well, the last of the few, Paddy Hemingway, the 105-year-old former RAF pilot who fought over the skies not just of Britain but France too, securing this country's freedom over the course of the Second World War. He has sadly died this week. And with him, so goes an era of immortal heroes, of people who took to the skies to defend this country in the most daring acts of bravery, again and again and again. One of the most remarkable things about Paddy Hemingway was how he kept going. He was shot down not once, not twice, not three, but many more times. Once, just off the coast of Clacton, Nigel Farage's parliamentary constituency. Nigel Farage once met Paddy Hemingway. He knew a number of the people who fought in the Battle of Britain. And that's one of the reasons why our political editor, Christopher Hope, went to the RAF Memorial to talk to Nigel Farage about one of Britain's great heroes.
Nigel Farage, there have been tributes to Paddy Hemingway from the Prince of Wales, from the Prime Minister. You haven't spoken yet. Why do you think his passing moves people so much?
I haven't spoken because I saved it for GB News. I grew up less than a mile from the grass strip at Biggin Hill, the most famous fighter station of the war. And as a kid, I do remember once coming home with an incendiary bomb we found.
Oh my goodness.
And we found bits of old Dornier bomber. And so I kind of grew up with this.
Was it exploded, the bomb, was it?
No, it was unexploded.
Oh my goodness.
Mum wasn't very happy. But for the last few decades, I've been patron of a Battle of Britain museum, a little amateur museum in Shoreham, Kent. And through that, I got to meet many, many Battle of Britain pilots. And of course, of the few, as Churchill called them, the famous at the end of the battle, Churchill says, never in the field of human history was so much owed by so many to so few. It's about 3,000 young men that flew in the Battle of Britain. It started at the middle of July, went through to the end of September. And the 3,000 of them take part. And the last one of all of them has just died aged 105.
And we're meeting here at the Battle of Britain Memorial on the embankment in London. Yeah. It's an active memorial. Look at the airman there running to his Spitfire to defend the country.
Or Hurricane.
Or Hurricane, yeah.
Or Hurricane.
Yeah.
And that's important. And it's funny, when I used to meet them, in their 90s or whatever they were, 80s, whatever, I could always tell who was a Spitfire pilot and who was a Hurricane pilot, because pilot officers flew Spitfires and generally pilot sergeants flew Hurricanes. There was almost like a class divide as to who flew what. But it's one of those stories. There is no doubt, that if it hadn't been for the few, if it hadn't been for the Luftwaffe giving up on air superiority, that Hitler would have invaded the country. And there is no doubt we would not have been able to defend ourselves.
Let's walk along a bit further here where some of the names are of those who fell. Why do you think this resonates so much with our generation now who haven't seen action in the same way?
We haven't, but we know lots of people who've served in Iraq and Afghanistan and elsewhere. I think it's something about 1940, isn't it? It's the year that Britain stands alone. I mean, to be fair, the Greeks did hold out a bit too, but it's the year that Britain stands alone.
That's right.
And just there's something has become incredibly romantic in our folk history about this particular group of people. I also think the Spitfire, and there are now more Spitfires flying than there have been for decades, because they're doing up old ones, they're putting them back in the air, the distinctive sound of the Merlin engine, the beauty of the shape. There is something, even though it's to do with war and death, there's still something romantic about the Spitfire and Harrigan.
And you met, did you, Paddy Hemingway?
I met him once at Hendon, at the RAF Museum. But I knew some of the others really very well.
Yeah.
It was a great shame because the 80th anniversary of the battle, of course, lockdown happened. So, like the little museum in Shoreham that I'm part of, we weren't able to celebrate the 80th perhaps in a way that we'd have liked.
And what can we learn from them, that generation now? I mean, we look back at that as the best of us, really, the best of our generation as Brits.
Well,
what can we take from that?
Well, just read Robert Hardman in today's Daily Mail, a 3-page interview with Hemingway, aged 104. And 4 times he was shot down, escaping through German lines in Italy. What can we learn? You know what we can learn is that even when the odds are against you, which they were, if you're determined, if you believe in what you're doing and you have the right cause, you can win through.
I just want to ask one question about Ukraine. I mean, we're going to see a conversation tonight between President Trump, Vladimir Putin. There is talk about British troops on the ground. Can they fire back? I mean, we're now back in the same situation of discussing putting our boys in harm's way. Should there be a vote of MPs on that? And where do you sit on the issue of Ukraine?
Well, the fact we're having talks, albeit talks about talks today between Putin and Trump, is a good thing. That's a good thing. I think the worry is that Putin must not be seen to come out of this having achieved a big victory out of the invasion. This is going to be difficult. It's going to be very, very difficult indeed. I am very nervous about putting British troops into Ukraine, and I'll tell you why. Troops were put into Korea at the end of the Korean War. 71 years later, there are still 25,000 American troops in Korea. If we're going to make a commitment to Ukraine, number one, the army isn't big enough. And number two, how long is it for? What are the rules of engagement? There's a lot of questions here. And I have no doubt if Keir Starmer was to do this without a vote in Parliament, there'd be uproar.
Right.
Truly the end of an era. With every year passing, we lose people who have been such an important part of our country's story. The final RAF pilot from the Battle of Britain. And of course, it's not been long since that crucial anniversary of D-Day. We are losing more and more of those who stormed those beaches in June 1944 too. It's so important that we remember their legacy, that we record their words, that we continue to realise what made this country as it is today. Well, I've been Tom Harwood for GBN Originals. Remember to subscribe to the GB News YouTube channel for more original content.